Hello, friend, and welcome to The Sleepy Meteorologist. Tonight, we're floating gently into the soft and swirling world of winds. From the tender hush of a coastal breeze to the silent glide of jet streams far above, we'll explore how air moves across our planet, guided by sunlight, pressure, and the slow, quiet turning of the Earth. These invisible rivers in the sky shape our weather, carve our clouds, and brush across our skin with stories carried from distant places. The winds may be quiet, but they are never still. Maybe your day has been long. Maybe your thoughts feel tangled like tall grasses in a breeze. That's okay. You've made it here. And now, there's nothing more to do. What time is it for you right now? Are the winds gentle where you are? Is there a whisper at your window? Or only stillness in the night? If you enjoy these calming meteorology journeys, you're always welcome to like or subscribe, only if it feels restful to do so. But for now, let your body settle. Let your breath follow the rhythm of air. Let your thoughts drift like clouds on a breeze. Let's begin. Every gust of wind, every gentle breeze that touches your skin, every hush that stirs the trees outside your window, begins with something invisible yet ever present. It begins with warmth, and that warmth begins with the sun. From nearly 93 million miles away, sunlight pours down on our planet. Not all at once, not all in the same way. Some parts of the Earth, like the equator, receive sunlight more directly. Others, like the polar regions, see it at a slant. Oceans absorb it slowly and deeply. Deserts drink it in quickly, radiating heat back into the air. Forests hold onto it just a little longer, cushioned by leaves and soil. This uneven warming is not a flaw. It is the beginning of movement. It is the start of the wind. As sunlight warms the ground, the air above it begins to respond. Where the heat is strong, air molecules gain energy. They move faster, rise higher, and begin to spread apart. The air becomes lighter, less dense, and begins to rise like a quiet breath exhaled by the land. Meanwhile, in cooler regions, air behaves differently. With less energy, it sinks, it rests, it gathers. And this difference, this beautiful imbalance, is what sets the atmosphere into motion. The Earth is never still, and the sky, though it may appear calm, is constantly adjusting, seeking balance. The rising and falling of air begins an invisible dance, a circulation, a flow. This rising of warm air and sinking of cooler air creates what meteorologists call convection. But tonight, we don't need technical words. We can just think of it as the sky breathing, airlifting, then drifting, then settling again. In one part of the world, the sun may be rising. In another, it's setting. Somewhere, a desert is glowing with heat, while an ocean holds the chill of night. The sun is the gentle instigator, quietly shaping the movements of our atmosphere from afar. And so, the wind begins. Not with speed, not with force, but with warmth, with sunlight meeting Earth, and Earth replying in kind. So the next time you feel a breeze on your cheek, or hear the sigh of trees in motion, you can remember that moment was born of sunlight, of warmth unevenly shared, of the sky's soft desire to move, to balance, to breathe. It all begins there, every current, every breeze, every wandering wisp of air. The sun touches the earth releases warmth, the air begins to stir, and wind gently begins to wander. There is a quiet rule in our atmosphere. Air is always seeking balance. In the great sky above us, air is not static. It shifts, it drifts, it flows, not randomly, but with purpose. And the force that guides this graceful movement is something called air pressure. Picture the air above us as an ocean of invisible weight. Even though we cannot see it, the atmosphere presses gently down on us at all times. But this pressure isn't the same everywhere. It changes, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically, depending on temperature, altitude, and humidity. Where the sun warms the earth and air rises, pressure tends to be lower. There's simply less weight above that point. In cooler areas where air sinks, it gathers and becomes denser, pressing down more firmly. That creates a region of higher pressure. And what does air do when it senses this difference? It moves, softly, silently, steadily. Air flows from areas of higher pressure to lower pressure, like water trickling downhill. Not in a rush, but in a gentle, continuous dance. This movement is the wind we feel. It might arrive as a cool whisper through the trees, or it might be the quiet swirl you see spinning dry leaves in a circle. At its heart, it is always the same, a balancing act between pressures in the sky. In meteorology, we often speak of pressure gradients, the difference between one area of pressure and another. But tonight, we don't need complex terms. We can simply imagine the atmosphere as an ocean of softness, always searching for stillness, always adjusting itself with care. The greater the difference between pressures, the more determined the air becomes in its journey. But when the contrast is small, the air drifts ever so gently, barely brushing the ground as it passes. And so, wind is not just motion, it's a response, a reply from the sky to the changes below. It is air flowing with intention, always from where it is abundant to where it is needed. Every breeze you feel is part of this search for balance. Every gust is the air trying to even itself out. From high to low, softly and slowly, the pressure dance continues. Along quiet coastlines, where land meets water in a long, embracing curve, something gentle stirs by day. A breeze, a breath, a whisper from the sea. To understand it, we return again to sunlight. When morning light touches the earth, it doesn't warm all things the same way. Land, with its solid, dark surfaces, absorbs the sun's warmth more quickly. The ocean, vast and fluid, changes temperature more slowly. And this simple difference, the pace at which land and water warm, sets something beautiful in motion. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, the air above the warming land begins to rise. Slowly, quietly, warm air, always lighter, lifts and expands like a sigh released into the blue. And as it rises, it leaves behind a gentle space, a space the cooler air over the sea is eager to fill. So the ocean responds. A current of air begins to drift inward, from the sea to the shore. This is the sea breeze, an onshore wind born not of force, but of balance. It is nature's quiet reply to uneven heating, a movement created by contrast, yet expressed in calm. You might feel it as a soft brush on your skin as you stand near the shore. A touch of coolness carried from distant waves. It slides over sand, lifts through grasses, and weaves between coastal trees. Often it brings with it the scent of salt, of sea foam, of faraway waters. The sea breeze is never rushed. It begins slowly after sunrise and strengthens as the land continues to warm. By afternoon, it may be steady enough to flutter clothes on a line or stir ripples across a tide pool. And yet, even at its strongest, it holds a kind of peace, a consistency, a rhythm. If you were to watch from above, you'd see warm air rising over the land, cool air flowing inland from the sea, and high above it all, return currents flowing back toward the ocean, completing the circle. This is a local wind system, a small, beautiful loop that repeats each day. The sun warms the shore, and when the day begins to fade, the system slowly softens. The warmth of the land retreats, the air settles, and the sea breeze quiets once more. But for a time, each day along the coast, the sea breeze breathes gently inward, a cool sigh from the sea to the land, a reminder that even the air listens and responds. That wind is not chaos, but conversation. So, if you ever find yourself by the shore on a warm afternoon and you feel the air stir from the water's edge, pause for a moment, close your eyes, let it pass through your hair, across your face. That breeze began far away, over open water, and journeyed just to reach you, a whisper from the ocean, reminding the land that it is never alone. And then night falls. As the sun dips below the horizon and the sky fades to twilight, the earth begins to shift. The same contrast that brought the sea breeze during the day now reverses its direction. The land, which once warmed so quickly, now cools just as fast. The sea, slower to heat, is also slower to let go of its warmth. And so, under the hush of moonlight, a new breeze begins. Now, the air over the land becomes cooler than the air above the sea. It settles, becomes denser, and gently sinks. This cooler, heavier air begins to drift outward, away from the shore, back towards the sea. This is the land breeze. Unlike its daytime sibling, the land breeze is often quieter, more subtle. It flows gently from the coast to the ocean in the hours after sunset, moving softly beneath the stars. It brings with it the faint scent of earth, of grasses, of warm soil now cooling in the night. You may not feel it immediately. It's not a strong wind, not a gust, but a quiet exhalation, like the land letting go of the heat it held all day. A slow release. The land breeze is strongest in the early hours of the night, often near midnight, when the difference in temperature between land and sea is greatest. It flows just above the surface, skimming the coastline, sometimes pushing low fog or mist across the sand. Out at sea, this breeze can help guide nocturnal sailors, or shape the formation of small clouds just offshore. Though invisible, it paints a story across the night sky, a gentle counterpoint to the warmth of day. Just as the sea breeze arrives with sunlight, the land breeze comes with starlight. A rhythmic exchange, a nightly return. And if you listen closely in the dark, you may hear it. The rustle of palm leaves, the faint shift in the reeds, the cooling hush against a window pane. A breath from the land to the water, soft as a sigh. The moon may rise, casting its silver light across calm waves. The air flows slowly outward, like a lullaby carried from shore to sea. Nature, once again, seeking balance, always adjusting, always responding. So tonight, as you rest, you can imagine the land breeze moving gently over the sand. You can picture it gliding past quiet homes and moonlit beaches, reaching out to meet the sea. A soft exchange, a nighttime rhythm, a breath beneath the stars. Sometimes, the most powerful forces in nature are the ones we never feel directly. One of them is always beneath us, the turning of the earth. Though we don't sense it as we lie still beneath the stars, the planet is slowly rotating, gracefully, endlessly, like a great spinning sphere. And this constant motion gently tugs on the air around us, introducing a quiet twist to the winds above. This invisible influence has a name. It's called the Coriolis effect, but don't let the term feel too large or technical. Tonight, we'll drift into its meaning gently, as if floating in the air itself. As air moves across the surface of the Earth, from high pressure to low, from warm regions to cool, it doesn't travel in a straight line. Instead, the Earth's rotation subtly curves the path of that air, not with a push, but with a soft redirection. In the northern hemisphere, this curve leans to the right. In the southern hemisphere, it bends to the left. And though the winds never know they are curving, the result is that every breeze carries a quiet twist, a graceful arc carved by the turning of the world beneath it. This is not something we can feel with our skin. It's not a gust or a breeze or a temperature. It's not loud or sharp or sudden. It is subtle, a shift, a long, slow influence that shapes global winds, ocean currents, and even the spin of hurricanes. The Coriolis effect is strongest near the poles and weakest at the equator. But no matter where you are, it gently shapes the way air moves across the sky, nudging weather systems, curving jet streams, and guiding the great atmospheric rivers that connect continents. If the Earth stood still, winds would move in straight lines from high to low pressure. But because our world turns, quietly, constantly, those winds curve, they spiral, they dance. It's a beautiful thought that the wind you feel is part of a global choreography, gently spun by the Earth's own rotation. Imagine standing on a hill, feeling a breeze at dusk. Though it feels soft and simple, that breeze has been touched by the turning of the entire planet. It has followed a curved path, not because of chaos, but because of consistency, because of rhythm. That's the Coriolis effect. Not a force in the usual sense, but a result of motion, an echo of the Earth's spin, a twist felt in every wisp of air that travels far. So as you rest tonight, and the air brushes your face or whispers at your window, you can imagine that gentle curve, that planetary influence, that invisible spiral that moves across oceans and deserts, shaping the sky with every rotation of the world. The wind may be soft, but it remembers the spin of the Earth. In the heart of the tropics, beneath skies painted with slow drifting clouds, a set of winds moves with quiet purpose. They've been here for centuries, steady, dependable, and calm. These are the trade winds, and they are among the most consistent travelers on Earth. The trade winds blow from east to west, hugging the equator in both hemispheres. In the northern hemisphere, they drift from the northeast. In the southern, from the southeast, always toward the equator, always westward, always moving in a path shaped by warmth, pressure, and the Earth's rotation. They arise from the same story we've heard before: warm air rising at the equator, cooler air sinking at subtropical latitudes. This cycle, called the Hadley cell, draws air back toward the equator at the surface. And thanks to the Coriolis effect, this returning air is gently curved into the trade winds we know today. But meteorology aside, the trade winds carry more than just molecules of air. They carry history. For centuries, these winds guided explorers across oceans. They filled the sails of ships heading westward, stitching together continents and shaping the course of human travel. Ancient mariners knew their patterns well, trusting in their steadiness like a compass written into the sky. Even now, in our modern world of satellites and engines, the trade winds remain. They transport moisture across vast stretches of ocean, helping to form the tropical rain belts and feeding the growing clouds of distant storms. They breathe life into weather systems and stir the seas from coast to coast. But to the quiet observer, the trade winds are not just part of weather. They are something to feel, something to listen to, a memory on the wind. They are the breeze you might feel while resting on a hammock beneath palm trees, the warm eastward hush that drifts across island shores, the whisper that moves through jungle canopies and dances along coral reefs. Their rhythm is ancient, their touch familiar, and despite their constancy, the trade winds are not rushed. They do not hurry. They move with balance, guided by the sun's warmth, the planet's shape, and the memory of motion. If you stood at the edge of a tropical beach at dawn and waited, you would feel them, not as a storm or a gust, but as a presence, as a breath from the Earth's equator, steady and serene. They are timeless travelers, crossing oceans, not with noise, but with grace, still carrying clouds, still carrying rain, still carrying the hush of stories once told beneath sails and stars. So, tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine them passing far above the sea, crossing moonlit waves, sliding between islands, moving endlessly, peacefully, just as they always have, the trade winds, calm, reliable, and endless. Just above the equator, where the sun climbs highest and the days shimmer with warmth, there exists a quiet band in the sky, a place where winds grow still, where movement slows, where the air, heavy with heat and moisture, rises and waits. This tranquil region is known as the doldrums. It's a name that once stirred unease in sailors. But tonight, we meet it not with fear, but with reverence. The doldrums are not a place of drama, but of pause, a still belt that stretches like a quiet sigh across the middle of the earth. Here, the sun's energy is at its most direct. The surface warms evenly, and the air above it grows light, humid, and buoyant. Instead of flowing sideways as a breeze, the air rises, straight up, softly and steadily, leaving behind a hush where horizontal winds might otherwise drift. Because of this vertical motion, the doldrums lack the steady breezes found in other regions. Instead, the atmosphere here feels suspended. The skies are often filled with towering clouds and afternoon rain, but at ground level, the air feels hushed, calm, almost unmoving. Historically, the doldrums were dreaded by sailors in the age of wind-powered ships. Vessels caught in this belt of stillness could drift listlessly for days or even weeks, surrounded by the endless ocean and motionless sails. Time stretched, silence deepened, and without wind, there was nowhere to go. But tonight, we can think of the doldrums differently, not as a trap, but as a place of balance. It's a region where the atmosphere resets, where the upward movement of warm air helps power the grand circulation of the planet. Air rises here, climbs high into the sky, then drifts poleward aloft, eventually sinking again in the subtropics, to form the loops that drive the trade winds. The doldrums are the breath in, the inhale of the Earth's great atmospheric rhythm. And though the name might suggest monotony, there is beauty in the stillness. Rain showers rise and fall like soft curtains. Thunderheads build slowly, only to dissolve into evening mist. The sea lies calm, with gentle swells and mirrored skies. Even in this quiet zone, the Earth is always moving. But the pace slows. The winds pause. The breath between motions is felt most deeply here. So if you ever find yourself imagining the equator, picture this: a wide blue horizon, a warm sky filled with drifting clouds, and a sea so calm it reflects the heavens. The doldrums, a pause in the planet's breath, a stillness with purpose. And if you find stillness within yourself tonight, you found your own kind of doldrums, a soft, restful moment suspended in time. far above the surface of the Earth, where commercial planes soar and the sky turns a deeper blue, there are powerful winds that sweep across the planet with silent speed. These are the jet streams, invisible to the eye, yet vast, fast, and endlessly moving. Jet streams are not like the breezes we feel on the ground. They are narrow bands of strong wind, flowing from west to east, high in the upper atmosphere. Imagine a river in the sky, fast, focused, and winding along the edges of pressure systems. That is the jet stream. They form where cold and warm air masses meet, especially near the boundaries between the polar regions and the mid-latitudes. These contrasts in temperature create steep gradients in pressure, and where pressure changes quickly, the wind responds, flowing swiftly along the edges. Jet streams typically occur around 30,000 to 40,000 feet above sea level. Up there, they can travel at speeds over 150 miles per hour. But even at that height, they are shaped by the ground below. Mountains, coastlines, and seasonal temperature shifts gently guide their path, causing them to dip, ripple, or strengthen. Though we cannot see them, jet streams are sculptors of weather. They guide the movement of storm systems, bending their paths across continents. They influence the development of cold fronts, heat waves, and rainfall patterns. When a jet stream dips southward, it can bring cool air into warm regions. When it lifts northward, it may allow heat to linger longer. Airplanes also follow them. Pilots often ride with the jet stream when flying east, using its speed to shorten travel time and conserve fuel. On westward flights, they may avoid it altogether. And yet, despite their strength, jet streams are not chaotic. They are graceful, serpentine, like ribbons of wind weaving through the upper sky. If you could stand above the clouds and watch the atmosphere from afar, you'd see these rivers of air tracing across the globe, fluid, continuous, and ever-changing. And just like rivers, they meander. Sometimes they flow straight and strong. Other times, they loop and bend. These undulations are known as Rossby waves, and they help regulate the climate by mixing warm and cold air across regions. It's all part of the atmosphere's natural desire for balance, just on a grander, more elegant scale. So tonight, as you lie still beneath the sky, know that far above you, winds are traveling with purpose. They are crossing oceans, guiding clouds, quietly shaping tomorrow's weather. Jet streams, rivers in the sky, flowing silently in the dark. As the sun sinks behind the peaks and twilight spills across the sky, the mountains begin to cool. The warmth they held all day slowly escapes, rising into the evening air like a soft exhale. And in this quiet cooling, something subtle begins to stir. A breeze, not loud, not fast, but present. This is the mountain breeze, and it flows gently downhill as the night arrives. During the day, sunlight warms the slopes and ridges of mountains. The rock and soil absorb heat and pass it to the air above, allowing it to rise slowly, lifting into the open sky. But as the sun sets, the warmth retreats. The slopes lose their heat quickly, especially higher up, where the air is thinner and cooler already. Now, the air near the mountaintops begins to cool and grow denser, and like a slow-moving river of air, it starts to drift downward, following the contours of the land. From high ridges and rocky outcrops, down into shaded gullies and sleeping forests, the breeze flows with gravity's gentle encouragement. It's not a strong wind. It doesn't rustle the trees or scatter dust. It glides through alpine meadows, over pine needles, past boulders still warm from the day, In valleys, this descending air gathers softly, brushing against the land like a hush. You might feel it if you're still enough, just a touch of coolness on your skin. A momentary shift in the air, a signal that the mountains are settling in for the night. Mountain breezes are a type of katabatic wind, a word that simply means flowing, downward. But tonight, let's think of it instead as the mountains sighing after a long, sunlit day. These breezes help shape the overnight temperatures in mountain valleys. They bring cooler air down into lower elevations, often leading to chilly nights and dew-touched mornings. Farmers and gardeners who live near these slopes know the rhythm well. They learn to watch the shadows and feel the change. Sometimes, the breeze carries the scent of pine or wildflowers or cold stone. Sometimes, it's almost too soft to notice. But it is always there, part of the cycle of warmth rising and coolness returning. And if you listen carefully during that twilight hour, when the sky turns violet and the land darkens with quiet, you might hear the faint sound of it moving. Not a whistle or a roar, just a shift, a hush, the language of the land unwinding. So tonight, as you rest, you can imagine the mountain breeze drifting downward, a slow, thoughtful traveler, passing tree by tree, rock by rock, shadow by shadow, a whisper from the high places, finding its way home. Morning comes to the mountains in golden silence. Before the sounds of the day begin, the sun begins its gentle ascent, casting long, slanted light across valley floors. The shadows lift, and the cool air that settled in the night begins to stir. As the light spills across the landscape, the slopes of the mountains begin to warm. Rock, soil, and grass awaken under the sun's touch, heating more quickly than the lower valley floor. And as the mountainsides grow warmer, the air above them begins to rise, slowly, smoothly, as if stretching after sleep. This upward movement creates a soft pull. Cooler air in the valley begins to flow upward to take its place. And with that, a valley breeze is born. This breeze flows gently uphill from the lower, shaded floor of the valley toward the warming peaks above. It's the opposite of the mountain breeze at twilight, yet just as delicate, just as patient. You might feel it on a morning hike, cooler air brushing past your cheeks as it climbs beside you, or see it in the way mist lifts from the ground, drawn upward by the same warming motion. This is a diurnal breeze cycle, where the mountains and valleys breathe in time with the sun. During the day, air rises. At night, it falls. And in between, the landscape is never quite still. Valley breezes are not loud or strong. They don't announce themselves, but they carry the quiet rhythm of change. A slow, deliberate exchange between land and sky. For plants and animals that live in these valleys, the breeze is a signal. Birds ride the upward flow in search of warmth. Flowers tilt toward the sun, encouraged by the gentle lift of air. Even clouds begin to form where the rising currents meet cooler layers above, creating soft, puffy shapes along the ridges by afternoon. If you were to watch the air itself, you might see it climbing like smoke, invisible but real, shaped by sunlight and the slope of the land. The valley breeze is part of the mountain's morning routine, a breath drawn in, slow and sure. And as the day grows brighter, the breeze may fade into the larger flow of regional winds. But for a time, in those early hours, it is the dominant motion, a quiet, unseen companion to the rising sun. So next time you find yourself in a mountain valley at dawn, pause for a moment. Close your eyes. Feel the upward motion. Let it remind you that even the air has its own gentle momentum, its own desire to move, a breeze born of warmth, rising softly, steadily, greeting the day one slope at a time. In the quiet places where valleys rise and ridges stretch toward the sky, the wind breathes in two directions, one upward, one down, each following the rhythm of temperature, terrain, and time. These are anabatic and katabatic winds, opposites in motion, yet part of the same mountain breath. Let's begin with anabatic winds. The name may sound complex, but their story is soft and simple. Anabatic winds are daytime travelers. They rise. When the sun climbs into the sky, its light begins to warm the mountain slopes, rocky surfaces, exposed cliffs, even grassy hillsides absorb the sun's energy quickly. And as these surfaces heat, so too does the air that hugs them. This newly warmed air becomes lighter, less dense than the cooler air surrounding it, and it begins to rise, slowly, smoothly, following the slope of the terrain upward, as if drawn toward the sky. That upward movement is the anabatic breeze. You may feel it on a morning hike, where the air gently presses against your back as you ascend, or see it in the way clouds begin to gather near ridgelines by afternoon, fed by the rising moisture carried upward on these sun-warmed winds. Now, let's return to nightfall. When the sun sinks low, the mountain begins to cool. Without the heat of daylight, the slopes release their warmth, and the air, once light and lifted, now cools, sinks, and begins to flow downward. This is the katabatic wind, a downslope breeze, heavier, colder air making its gentle descent. Katabatic winds are quiet companions of the evening. They slide softly down the hillsides, following gravity's suggestion. You might feel their chill if you live in a valley or rest near a shaded hollow. They're the breath of mountains exhaling into night. Both winds, rising and falling, are part of a cycle as old as the terrain itself. One draws energy from the sun. The other gives it back to the stars. In some places, these winds are faint, barely noticeable. In others, especially near glaciers or high plateaus, they can become stronger, shaping local weather, cooling crops, guiding birds. But always, they follow the land, and always, they move in rhythm with the day. You can think of anabatic and katabatic winds as the inhale and exhale of mountainous landscapes. A breath drawn in warmth, a breath released in coolness, a perfect natural balance. So tonight, whether you're near hills or far from them, imagine a slope bathed in moonlight. Picture air sliding quietly down, brushing over stone and soil. And imagine too the morning that follows, when sunlight returns and the wind begins to rise again. The mountains breathe and the wind follows. Now, let us drift toward the far edges of the earth, where ice stretches endlessly and sunlight arrives at a slant. Here, in the polar regions, a different kind of wind blows, one that is ancient, dry, and soft-spoken. These are the polar easterlies. Unlike the steady trade winds of the tropics, or the high-speed jet streams above, polar easterlies are slower, quieter, but no less important. They form in the world's coldest places, where the air is dense and heavy, and the silence is vast. In the polar zones, the sun's warmth is faint. The surface, made of ice, snow, and frozen ground, rarely absorbs much heat. As a result, the air above becomes cold and weighty. This air sinks, presses down, and as it settles, it begins to flow outward, away from the poles. But just as with other winds on Earth, this movement is not in a straight line. The Coriolis effect, that gentle nudge from the Earth's rotation, curves the wind. In the northern hemisphere, the the cold air flows from the northeast. In the southern hemisphere, it comes from the southeast, always drifting away from the poles, and always bending slightly westward. That's why we call them easterlies. Though they blow from the east, they often feel like a whisper from the frozen horizon. The polar easterlies aren't strong, but they're persistent. They brush across the snowfields. They glide along frozen coastlines. They carry fine particles of ice and ancient cold through the air. Some scientists believe that the air near the poles may be among the oldest and cleanest on the planet. These winds also shape the boundaries between cold and warmer air. Where they meet the mid-latitude westerlies, a zone of turbulence can form, often leading to the birth of winter storms. But in the heart of the polar region itself, the weather can be surprisingly calm. If you could stand on a polar plain, surrounded by ice, with no trees, no roads, and no sound, you might hear them. A distant rustle, a movement over snow, the breath of the planet's edge. And though the polar easterlies are quiet, they are part of a grand system. They help circulate air across the globe, balancing warmth and cold, energy and stillness. So tonight, as you lie in warmth, imagine the faraway places where wind moves through ice. Picture the long shadows of polar twilight, the glow of auroras above, and the hush of wind flowing across snow untouched for centuries. The polar easterlies, quiet, ancient, slow, whispers from the cold ends of the earth. Between the latitudes of 30 and 60 degrees, in both the northern and southern hemispheres, there flows a restless, sweeping band of air. These are the westerlies, the winds that blow from west to east, circling the globe with steady determination. They are travelers, movers of clouds, carriers of weather. While tropical winds, like the trade winds, are calm and reliable, the westerlies are a bit more varied. They are shaped by contrasts between warm and cold, ocean and land, season and storm. And in this region of the Earth, change is constant. The westerlies are born from the meeting of warm subtropical air and the cooler polar air that drifts downward. The warmth pushes upward, the cold pushes down, and between them, movement begins. This movement takes the form of broad, looping currents. The Coriolis effect curves them, giving the winds their west to east direction. And because of the varying temperatures, pressures, and landforms they encounter along the way, the westerlies often ripple and meander, like great rivers of air weaving through the mid-latitudes. You may not see them directly, but you can feel their influence. These winds are the ones that often bring rain or clear skies, warmth or cold fronts. They steer low-pressure systems across oceans and continents. They guide the jet stream above and the surface storms below. In many places, especially in temperate zones, the weather is defined by the westerlies. One day may be grey and windy, the next calm and blue, and the day after that rainy again. This shifting rhythm, the changing skies, the drifting clouds, the arriving storms, is the song the westerlies carry. They don't blow with the same intensity every day. Sometimes they're strong, fueled by deep pressure contrasts. Other times, they're soft, more of a suggestion than a gust. But they are almost always there, high above, quietly moving the atmosphere along. For centuries, sailors studied the westerlies. They knew these winds could speed their ships across oceans if they timed their journey just right. Even now, modern pilots and meteorologists watch them closely, mapping their movements to forecast the changing skies. And still, for all their influence, the westerlies are graceful. They carry clouds that stretch like long feathers. They guide fronts that sweep across landscapes. They help mix the air between regions, distributing warmth and moisture where it's needed, and drawing away what is not. You can think of them as the Earth's middle latitude breath, a sigh that moves sideways, sculpting weather as it goes. So tonight, as you rest, imagine a great sweep of wind flowing over the hills, across lakes, through cities, and over the open sea. Picture clouds tumbling along in its current. Picture the earth slowly turning beneath it. The westerlies are not chaotic, they are rhythm, and within them the weather learns to dance. In the shadow of mountain ranges, a special kind of wind sometimes arrives, not with fanfare, but with quiet transformation. It flows down the slopes, warm and dry, and touches the land below with unexpected softness. These are Chinook winds, sometimes called snow eaters. The Daolg begin on the windward side of tall mountains, where moist air climbs upward. As it rises, the air cools, it condenses, clouds form, and often rain or snow is released. This process removes much of the air's moisture, leaving it drier as it crosses the summit. Then, as that now dry air begins to descend on the leeward side of the mountains, it is compressed. The pressure increases, the air warms, and it warms quickly. By the time it reaches the valleys below, this wind, once cold and moist, has become dry and surprisingly warm. The contrast is striking. Snow that blanketed the ground only hours earlier begins to melt. Icicles drip, roads clear, and the landscape, once wintry and still, begins to soften into something new. Chinook winds can raise temperatures by 20, even 30 degrees Fahrenheit in just a few hours. But they do so gently. There's no fiery heat, just a steady, warming breath flowing across the land. You might feel it if you live near the foothills. One moment, the air is sharp and cold. The next, it carries the hint of spring. Windows fog, rivers stir, and the silence of snow gives way to the sound of water moving. These winds are most common along the eastern slopes of mountain ranges, like the Rockies, where geography and meteorology meet in just the right balance. But variations of Chinooks happen in other places too. Wherever moist air climbs, loses its burden and returns as warmth. To those who live in Chinook-prone regions, the winds are both familiar and mysterious. They arrive without warning, reshaping the world in subtle ways, melting snow, clearing skies, loosening winter's grip, if only for a day. And while some see them as disruptive, changing plans, softening ski slopes, waking rivers, they can also be comforting, a reminder that nothing, not even winter, lasts forever. The Chinook is a lesson in transition, in change without force, in warmth returned from height. So tonight, imagine a mountain breathing out, a warm breeze drifting downhill, snowflakes softening into droplets, ice turning to puddle, all of it, quietly, patiently undone. The snow eater doesn't roar, it whispers, and the land listens. In the valleys of southern France, especially near the Rhône River, there is a wind with a name, a wind that arrives with clarity and purpose, a wind that has shaped architecture, language, and legend. It is called the Mistral. The word itself feels crisp, sharp, fitting for a wind that arrives cold and dry, sweeping down from the north with unmistakable character. But tonight, we won't rush to meet it. We'll approach it gently, as the people of Provence have done for centuries, listening to its rhythm, feeling its personality, and learning its story. The Mistral begins its journey in the cold heart of Europe, where high-pressure systems settle over the continent and low-pressure systems form over the warmer Mediterranean Sea. Air, always seeking balance, begins to flow from high to low. The Your landscape helps guide it. The Mistral is funneled southward through the Rhone Valley, narrowing and accelerating like a river of wind. By the time it reaches the coast, it's fast and dry, cool air pressing downward, clearing the skies as it goes. But the Mistral doesn't arrive without warning. There are signs. The sky turns an unusually deep blue. Clouds vanish, leaving the air startlingly clear. Birds fly low, doors rattle, trees bow, and the land holds still in anticipation. Some days it arrives as a whisper, other days it howls. Yet even when strong, the Mistral is not destructive, it is purifying. It sweeps away dust, haze, and humidity, leaving behind a striking freshness. Afterward, the air feels almost weightless, clean, calm. The Mistral can last for a single day, or several. It follows patterns known well by locals, who learn to recognize its signs. Farmers watch their crops. Builders orient their homes to shield against it. Painters, poets, and composers have all tried to capture it, because the Mistral isn't just a wind, it's an experience. Like many named winds throughout history, the Mistral has a personality, a presence. It's not just a meteorological event, it's a companion to the seasons, a signal of change. And so, we remember that not all winds are anonymous. Some, like the Mistral, are storied, beloved, respected. They are woven into the lives of those who live beneath their path. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine a narrow valley touched by this ancient wind. Feel it flowing between stone houses and cypress trees, lifting dry leaves and clearing away the last remnants of fog. Hear it as a distant breath, crisp and cool, shaped by centuries of memory. The Mistral, a wind with a name, and a story whispered in every gust. From the wide golden stretches of the Sahara Desert, a warm wind begins to rise. It gathers heat from sun-baked sands. It draws moisture as it crosses the sea. And as it travels northward, it carries with it the breath of the desert, dry, dense, and unmistakable. This is the Sirocco. The Sirocco is a south to north wind, common in the Mediterranean, especially in places like Italy, Greece, and North Africa. It forms when warm air from the Sahara is pulled northward by low-pressure systems near southern Europe. And when that air begins to move, it carries more than just heat. It carries color, scent, and memory. In its earliest stage, the Sirocco is dry and dusty. Sand lifted from the desert floor travels high into the air, coloring the sky in soft amber or hazy gold. The sun appears dimmed, almost blurred behind a veil of fine particles. The light becomes diffuse, as if the world has been dusted with sunlight itself. As the Sirocco continues its journey, it often picks up moisture from the Mediterranean Sea. By the time it reaches coastal cities, it may feel warm and humid, heavy and quiet, an unusual combination that makes it hard to ignore. To many who live under its influence, the Sirocco is more than just a weather pattern. It has a mood. Some describe it as restless, others as melancholy. In literature, it is known to stir emotions, cloud the mind, and change the tone of the day. It's a wind that arrives not with force, but with weight. Even animals sense it. Birds stay grounded. Dogs grow still. The air feels thick. And yet, there's a beauty in this wind, a cinematic, almost surreal qualities to its arrival. The Sirocco is often accompanied by haze, by reddish light, by skies that feel distant and strange. The world takes on a dreamlike hue. People slow their pace, curtains stay drawn, and the wind continues its patient journey northward. And then, just as it came, the sirocco fades. The dust settles, the colours return to blue, the air clears, and everything feels lighter again. But while it's here, the sirocco reminds us of connection, of how wind can carry a piece of one place into another, of how the breath of a distant desert can brush against cities and hills far away. Tonight, as you settle into rest, imagine that golden haze drifting over rooftops. Picture warm air moving through olive groves, carrying the scent of sand and sun. Let the sirocco pass through your imagination, not harsh or heavy, but slow, soft and surreal. The desert breathes, and the wind carries its warmth to the sea, the sirocco, a whisper of the Sahara wrapped in golden light. In certain corners of the world, the wind doesn't just change the weather, it changes everything. These are the monsoon winds, and they move not with hours or days, but with seasons. They bring dryness, they bring rain, and in their rhythm, they shape rivers, forests, farms, and entire civilizations. The word monsoon comes from the Arabic mausim, meaning season, and that's exactly what it is, a seasonal wind shift, a change in the breath of the earth that occurs slowly, but with deep significance. In places like India, Southeast Asia, parts of Africa, and even northern Australia, the year is divided not into 4 seasons, but into 2, wet and dry. And it is the monsoon that decides the turning. Let's drift gently into how it works. During the cooler months, land cools faster than the ocean. High pressure builds over the continents, and the winds blow outward toward the sea. These are the dry monsoons. The air carries little moisture. Skies are often clear. The earth waits. But as the sun climbs higher in the sky during spring and summer, the balance shifts. The land warms more quickly than the surrounding ocean, creating a low-pressure zone. Moist air from the ocean now flows inland, drawn by this quiet pressure difference. And with it comes rain, not in a single storm, but in a season of rain. Weeks, months, a long, steady arrival of moisture that falls in patterns shaped by terrain and time. In some regions, over 90% of annual rainfall comes during the monsoon season. It doesn't always arrive on time, and it doesn't fall evenly. But when it comes, the land transforms. Brown hills become green, rivers rise, seeds long asleep awaken, frogs sing, trees stretch, fields flourish, crops, water, reservoirs, and human rhythms are built around the timing of the monsoon. Farmers prepare their soil in anticipation. Roofs are checked. Markets shift. Lives lean into the season. There's reverence here, respect. The monsoon is not just a weather event. It is a life-giving force. And yet, it is wind that begins it. The steady, seasonal movement of air, driven by differences in heat between land and sea, orchestrating this immense hydrological shift. Monsoon winds do not howl or roar. They move with purpose, slow, steady, and patient. In the upper atmosphere, they help shift the jet streams. At the surface, they guide moisture-laden clouds inland, where they rise over mountains or meet warm currents and fall as rain. And just as the season came, it will leave. The winds will reverse again. The skies will grow quiet. The ground will dry, and the rhythm will pause until next year. But the memory of rain will remain, in rivers, in roots, and in the air. So tonight, picture a vast plain turning green beneath falling rain. Imagine a warm wind brushing across waterlogged fields. See the clouds gathering not with urgency, but with promise. The monsoon is not a storm. It is a season, a breath of wind that nourishes the world. Look up at the sky on any given day, and you'll see a gallery, a shifting, moving, ever-changing canvas of form and light. Clouds, soft and untethered, may seem like random fluff, but behind each shape, each curve, streak, or spiral, there is a quiet sculptor at work. That sculptor is the wind. Wind is the artist of the sky. It stretches clouds into long ribbons called cirrus, far above the earth where the air is dry and cold. It lifts cottony tufts into soft cumulus shapes, rising gently like thoughts. It flattens thick layers into quiet, uniform stratus clouds, low grey blankets that seem to hush the world below. But these aren't static paintings. They are alive, moving in time, and it is the wind that gives them motion and mood. As air flows through different levels of the atmosphere, it shapes clouds based on temperature, humidity, and pressure. A fast-moving wind may shear the top of a storm, spreading the anvil-like cloud into dramatic fan shapes. Gentle breezes may curl clouds into wave-like undulatus forms, soft, rolling patterns that ripple across the sky like a visual lullaby. Sometimes, when warm air rises quickly, the wind allows towering cumulonimbus clouds to bloom like vertical sculptures, stretching upward as if reaching for something unseen. Other times, horizontal winds spread thin veils of altostratus, creating halos around the moon or sun. Even the smallest puff is shaped by wind, its rise, its edge, its movement. No cloud forms alone. It is always being shaped, gently or boldly, by the air that surrounds it. And, while we often admire the cloud, we forget the wind that gave it shape. Wind sculpts clouds not just with strength, but with elegance. It paints with pressure and temperature, brushes with updrafts and downbursts, layers with motion. If you were to watch a time-lapse of the sky, you'd see it, the choreography, the clouds stretching, folding, drifting. Each movement not random, but guided. Each shift in form, a response to the air's invisible hand. And just as artists change their style with mood, so too does the wind. Some days, the sky is full of sharp lines and dramatic builds. Other days, it is soft, diffused, minimal. Tonight, as you lie beneath your own sky, let your mind drift upward. Picture clouds as gentle sculptures, slowly being shaped by wind's invisible brush. No two the same, no form permanent, only motion, only softness, only now. Wind, the unseen artist of the sky. Clouds, its fleeting, beautiful creations. Imagine the atmosphere not as a single layer of air, but as many, each stacked like a soft, invisible blanket over the next. From the ground all the way up to the highest reaches of the sky, air flows, shifts, and drifts, often in very different ways at different heights. This difference is known as wind shear. It sounds like a sharp word, but we'll approach it slowly, softly, because what it really describes is motion in layers. The idea that wind just above us might be flowing in one direction, while the air a little higher up is moving in another, or perhaps at a different speed, always in motion, always adjusting. Wind shear occurs when wind direction or speed changes significantly with altitude. Imagine standing on the ground and feeling a gentle breeze from the south. Now, picture being 1,000 feet above, and up there, the wind is blowing from the west, and much faster. That contrast is wind shear, and though we can't feel it directly, wind shear shapes the sky around us. It can influence the way clouds form and how storms behave. When winds at different altitudes push air masses in different directions, clouds may tilt, stretch, or spiral. Thunderstorms may grow more complex, rising into beautiful but powerful shapes. The atmosphere becomes layered, rich with motion, depth, and texture. Pilots know this well. As an aircraft climbs through the layers, it may pass through areas of changing wind speed or direction, creating bumps and sways that we call turbulence. But from a sleep-friendly view, we can think of it more gently, as a reminder that the sky is never still. It breathes, it flexes, it responds. In some ways, wind shear is like the brushstroke of a painter. It carves the upper edges of clouds. It allows storms to rotate gently, organizing their structure. Without wind shear, many of the dramatic cloudscapes we see would not take shape. It gives storms a kind of spine, a guiding hand. Even soft, layered clouds, those that stretch like horizontal sheets, owe their form in part to subtle changes in wind aloft. The atmosphere, like an orchestra, is made more beautiful by contrast, and wind shear is one of its many quiet instruments. You don't need to understand the physics to appreciate it. Just look to the sky, especially near sunset, when streaks of cirrus clouds reveal different wind directions high above. One set of wisps may flow left, another right, each tracing a different path, layered gently upon the other. Tonight, as you breathe slowly, imagine the sky as a stack of moving veils, each one drifting at its own pace, each one playing its part in the slow, swirling ballet of the atmosphere. Wind shear isn't violent, it's graceful complexity, it's layers in motion. Not all wind is the same. Some of it brushes against your cheek as you step outside, cool, grounded, full of Earth's breath. Other winds pass far overhead, silent, swift, untouched by the trees or rooftops below. There is a difference between surface winds and those that move high in the sky, and the space between them is where friction fades and freedom begins. Near the ground, wind must weave its way around obstacles. Trees, buildings, hills, grasses, all of these slow the air. They tug at it, twist it, redirect it. This is where the atmosphere meets the world below, and that meeting creates resistance. We call it friction. Because of this, surface winds tend to be slower. They curve more. They vary with terrain. You might feel them swirl in a garden, drift gently along a shoreline, or settle between buildings in a quiet town. But higher up, the land's influence fades. Up there, above the drag of forests and cities, the wind flows more freely, smoothly, swiftly, like rivers of air tracing across the sky. At just a few thousand feet above the surface, wind speeds increase. And higher still, in the upper troposphere, jet streams flow with astonishing speed, fast enough to cross oceans in hours. These high-level winds are largely shaped by pressure patterns and temperature contrasts, not by the ground below. And yet, both kinds of wind, near and far, are connected. Surface winds are often guided by what happens above. When high-level winds stretch or shift, they pull on the layers below, setting pressure patterns in motion. It's like the sky gently stirring the air at our feet. And in return, the shape of the land, the warmth of the ground, and the moisture from lakes and fields all send messages upward. Messages the higher winds carry across continents. This vertical relationship between winds is part of the atmosphere's harmony, a balance between drag and drift, between what is touched by earth and what is carried by sky. You can see this relationship in many places. On windy days, you might notice low clouds scudding quickly overhead, while leaves barely stir at your feet. Or you may see high clouds moving one way, while ground-level winds blow another. Each layer, doing its part. Tonight, as you lie still, think of the winds moving above you, layer by layer. The breeze that rustles the leaves, the current that glides over hills, the high winds crossing silently in the dark. All of them, moving together, separate yet linked. From earth to sky, wind flows in harmony, slower below, swifter above, and always gently in motion. There are times when the wind is too quiet to describe, and other times when it demands to be named. Long ago, before satellite maps and digital forecasts, sailors at sea needed a way to understand the wind, to measure it, to speak of it, to prepare for it. And so, a scale was born, a simple, poetic system that gave language to something invisible. This is the Beaufort scale. Developed in the early 1800s by Sir Francis Beaufort, a British naval officer, the scale was designed to classify wind strength, not by numbers or instruments, but by its effects. What the wind did to the sea, what it did to ships, what it did to the world around it. And though technology has changed, the Beaufort scale still lives on, timeless, gentle, and beautifully descriptive. At force 0, the air is calm. Smoke rises vertically. Leaves do not stir. It's the stillness before sound. At force 1, it becomes a light air, just enough to feel on your skin, a whisper across your cheek, the barest hint of movement. Force 2 is a light breeze. You'll see it in the rustle of leaves, the flutter of flags, the way smoke drifts sideways. Then comes the gentle breeze of force 3, a phrase that feels like a lullaby. Now leaves dance. Wind can be felt on your face. It brushes grasses and turns weather vanes. By force 4, it is a moderate breeze. Small branches sway. Dust may lift. There's rhythm to the motion. Boats begin to feel it too. Force 5 brings a fresh breeze, a wind with energy, yet not too strong. Trees move, flags snap. The sea shows waves with curling tops. And onward it goes. Strong breeze, near gale. Gale, strong gale, storm. Violent storm. Hurricane. Each level given a name. Each name speaking not only to force, but to feeling. What makes the Beaufort scale so beloved is not just its precision, but its poetry. It doesn't shout numbers. It tells a story of what wind feels like, of what it touches, of how it speaks to the world. It gives words to something we often only feel. It reminds us that wind is more than weather. It's an experience. Even today, mariners, meteorologists, and nature lovers use this language. It allows us to share the unseeable, to say, the wind is a fresh breeze, and understand exactly what that means. Not in miles per hour, but in motion, in mood. So tonight, as you lie still and feel the softness of air around you, imagine the Beaufort scale unfolding gently above. From the silent calm of force 0 to the fluttering lightness of force 3, all the way to the edges of storms. Though we won't drift that far tonight, let's stay near the gentle middle, where the breeze is fresh but kind, where the language of wind becomes a lullaby. The Beaufort scale, a measured whisper, a timeless vocabulary of the sky. As the sun slips beyond the horizon and the warmth of the day begins to fade, the world grows still, the colours soften, the air settles. And in this cooling quiet, the wind changes. It doesn't vanish, it whispers. These are the whisper winds of the night, delicate breezes that drift low to the ground, slow and soft, shaped by darkness and calm. During the day, sunlight fuels stronger winds. The ground heats, the air rises, and breezes stir with energy. But at night, without the sun's encouragement, everything relaxes. The land begins to cool, radiating its warmth upward, releasing the energy it held all day. And as the ground cools, so does the air just above it. The atmosphere becomes more stable. Movement slows. Wind no longer climbs and swirls. It settles, flattens, slides gently along the contours of the earth. These night winds are different. You might feel them brushing lightly through an open window, tugging at a curtain just enough to let moonlight in, or hear them rustle through dry grass outside, never in a rush, never abrupt. In cities, they move through alleyways and along quiet streets. In forests, they carry the scent of pine and soil, brushing through leaves with barely a sound. Over lakes, they glide across the surface, leaving behind soft ripples that catch the stars. Animals respond to them too. Insects fall quiet. Birds return to their nests. Even the trees seem to listen. No longer swaying, they simply nod in the hush. And while we sleep, these winds continue to move, cooling the landscape, guiding low fog and balancing the night's slow breath. Farmers and gardeners have long noticed the pattern. The earth sighs outward after dusk, and the breeze responds. These whisper winds don't travel far. They stay close, intimate. They're not meant for storms or journeys. They're meant for stillness, for letting go. If you were to step outside under a starry sky and stand very still, you might not even notice them at first, but after a moment you'd feel it, a brush on your skin, a sigh from a distant tree, a sense that the air is moving, gently, lovingly. Some winds arrive with purpose, others with memory, but these arrive with peace. So tonight, let them visit you. Picture a curtain swaying slightly, grass leaning just a little, the world dimly lit, and the wind, like a lullaby, wrapping softly around everything it touches. The whisper winds of the night, cool, gentle, full of rest. On quiet, sunlit afternoons, especially in dry, open places, something small and curious can be seen moving across the land. A swirl, a spin, a little dancer of dust and light. These are dust devils, miniature whirlwinds that rise from the warmth of the ground, twisting gracefully into the air before vanishing just as softly as they appeared. Despite their name, dust devils are not frightening. They are not storms. They are not tied to thunderclouds or bad weather. They are, in truth, playful, harmless, a momentary whisper of motion created by sun, soil, and sky. It begins with heat. When the sun shines on bare earth, sand, pavement, dry grass, the surface warms quickly. The air directly above it warms too, becoming lighter and eager to rise. If the layer of air above is cooler and a little more stable, the warm air near the ground gets trapped, just for a moment. But then, a break, a wobble, a shift. That warm air suddenly lifts. It rises quickly, and as it does, it begins to spin, nudged by uneven surfaces, tiny gusts, or local wind shifts. And just like that, a small column forms. It may be only a few feet tall, or it may stretch upward for hundreds. Inside, air spirals upward in a gentle vortex, pulling dust, sand, or leaves into its delicate dance. From a distance, it looks like a ghost of wind, thin, vertical, twirling through a sunlit field. Dust devils usually last less than a minute. Some vanish after only a few seconds. But while they're here, they tell a quiet story about the balance of heat and motion, about how the earth breathes upward, about how energy can express itself in gentle spirals. They're most common in deserts and dry climates, where the ground heats quickly and the skies are clear. But they can also appear in parking lots, ploughed fields, or summer meadows, anywhere there's warmth, space, and a moment of imbalance. To see one is to witness nature's smallest spin, a vortex not of destruction, but of play. Children may chase after them, farmers may pause to watch, animals take little notice. There's no thunder, no warning, just a flicker of rising dust, twisting against the wind. Some people believe they carry secrets, that they are sky spirits or whispers of the earth. And while science explains their formation in terms of thermals and vortices, there's still something enchanting about them, something softly magical. So tonight, close your eyes and picture one, a tiny spiral of air lifting from sun-warmed soil, twirling its way across an empty field. No path, no destination, just a moment of motion, and then stillness again. A dust devil, born of sunlight, spun by warmth, gone with the breeze. In the vast stillness of the desert, it may seem as if nothing moves. The air is dry, the heat heavy, the land stretches out in silence. But listen closely, and you will hear it. A whisper, a glide, a breath of wind shaping the earth itself. Desert winds are not loud. They do not roar or crash. They arrive with time, slow, persistent, and patient. And with every gust, they carry grains of sand from one place to another, reshaping the land one speck at a time. This is the wind's sculpting touch. Unlike water, which carves through rock with force, or ice, which cracks and lifts, the desert wind shapes through movement. It brushes the surface, lifting loose sand into the air. Some grains bounce along the ground in short hops, a motion known as saltation. Others are swept into low clouds that drift just above the desert floor. Over days, weeks, years, this movement adds up. Dunes begin to form. Some are small, just ripples on the sand. Others rise like golden waves, towering above the plain. And though they may seem frozen in place, dunes are always moving, slowly, steadily, marching across the landscape under the gentle guidance of the wind. Each dune has a shape, a windward side that receives the breeze, and a steeper leeward side where sand cascades downward. This balance gives dunes their graceful curves, their flowing forms. And while no two dunes are exactly alike, they all carry the signature of wind. You can see it in the patterns on the surface, wavy ridges like the lines of a fingerprint. You can feel it in the air, where warmth rises from the sand and breezes curl between the grains. Desert winds also sculpt stone, polishing rock into smooth faces or carving small arches and spires over time. But they do it with patience, always patient. In the evening, the desert wind often softens. As the heat escapes, the air cools and the motion slows. Sand settles, dunes rest. The sky turns amber, then blue, then black, and still, the shaping continues. You may not notice it, you may not hear it, but the land is always changing beneath the breath of the wind. So tonight, imagine a sea of dunes beneath a starry sky. Picture the breeze moving over each crest and trough. Feel the softness of time unfolding, grain by grain, curve by curve. The desert wind does not hurry, it sculpts with care, and in its quiet work, it creates beauty. In the polar regions, where sunlight lingers low, and the land holds onto cold like a long-held breath, a quiet transformation can take place. The air sparkles, not with rain, not with dust, but with ice, tiny floating crystals suspended in stillness. This is ice fog, a delicate phenomenon that forms when the air is so cold and so calm that moisture freezes into tiny shimmering particles, and around it flow the Arctic breezes. To understand this fragile fog, we must go where the temperatures dip far below freezing. In places like Alaska, Siberia, and northern Canada, the air can grow so cold that even the moisture in a breath or a car's exhaust turns instantly into ice. When these ice crystals linger, hanging just above the ground, a pale, glimmering fog appears. Unlike the heavy, wet fog of coastal mornings, ice fog is finer, drier. Each particle is a minuscule prism, catching and scattering the faint light of the sun, or moon, or even distant street lamps. The world becomes hushed and luminous, as if dusted in diamond powder. Now at a breeze. Arctic breezes are not in a hurry. They don't gust or shout. They drift low and slow, shaped by long nights and frozen land. As they move through the landscape, they stir the fog gently, lifting it, curling it, allowing it to sparkle in the air before letting it fall again. This wind might seem invisible, but you'll see its touch on the frozen branches of a spruce. You'll hear it in the soft rustle of snow. You'll feel it in the way the cold wraps softly around your face, not sharp, but present. Ice fog and Arctic wind often visit at dawn and dusk, when light is soft and the land is quiet. In these moments, the air becomes a canvas, brushed with motion and frost, drawn in gradients of silver and blue. And while this fog may settle low to the ground, the breeze above continues its work, guiding snow, forming drifts, shaping the terrain inch by inch. To walk through ice fog is to walk through breath made visible. Each step feels suspended in time. Each exhale leaves a trail that joins the glittering air. So tonight, as you settle into warmth, picture a polar plain touched by first light. Imagine the tiniest particles of ice dancing in the wind. See the breeze moving through them, turning fog into a living shimmer. No storm, no sound, just softness. Arctic breezes, ice fog, and the sparkle of frozen breath drifting through the air. Here on Earth, we often take wind for granted. We feel it through open windows, see it in moving clouds, hear it in the hush of trees. It is part of our lives, gentle, balanced, life-giving. But wind is not unique to Earth. There are breezes on other planets too, though they may not feel like the ones we know. Each world has its own atmosphere, its own rhythm, its own kind of breath. Let's drift, gently, into space. On Mars, the air is thin, only about 1% as dense as Earth's, and yet winds still blow. During the day, as sunlight warms the dusty surface, air rises, and when night falls, it cools and settles. These cycles create breezes that lift fine red dust into the Martian sky. Dust devils, taller and wider than any on Earth, can swirl across the Martian plains. And during certain seasons, winds stir vast dust storms that cover entire regions, cloaking the planet in a soft, reddish haze. But don't. Imagine a raw, Martian wind is quiet, slow, gentle in force, even when vast in scale. You wouldn't hear it howling. You'd feel it as a whisper, if you could feel it at all. On Venus, the story changes. There, the atmosphere is thick and heavy, almost 90 times denser than ours. The winds in the upper clouds rush at hurricane-like speeds, circling the planet in a matter of days. Below, near the surface, everything is slower, but higher up, the wind howls. You'd never want to stand there, but you can imagine it. A planet cloaked in gold and orange, with winds tearing through sulfuric clouds, hidden from view, full of force and heat. On gas giants like Jupiter and Saturn, winds are unimaginably fast. They form banded storms that stretch for thousands of miles. Some, like Jupiter's Great Red Spot, have been spinning for centuries. But even there, among the chaos, you find pattern, layers, beauty, and then you return home, to Earth, to this delicate balance of warmth, pressure, and moisture. to winds that carry rain, shape clouds, cool your skin, and stir the trees outside your window. Our winds are not too fast, not too faint. They are just right for weather, for forests, for oceans, for life. And tonight, as you rest, you can marvel at how rare that is. That our planet breathes with air that moves gently. That our wind is made for comfort, for rhythm, for rain. So, let your thoughts wander across the stars, and then return home, to this soft breeze, this earth wind, the most perfect wind of all. Walk into a forest on a quiet day, and you'll hear it, a rustle, a hush, a song, because trees, though rooted in stillness, become musicians when touched by the wind. They are nature's oldest wind instruments. Each leaf is a note, each branch a string, each trunk a hollowed drum waiting for a rhythm to pass through it. When the air begins to move, even gently, the forest responds, not with words, but with sound. In a pine grove, you may hear a soft, breathy whistle. The needles, long and slender, catch the wind like reeds, creating a sound both sharp and distant. In broad-leaved trees, like oaks and maples, you'll hear a flutter, a trembling, leaves tapping against one another like fingers on a table. Not in unison, but in layers, each one responding to the wind's slightest suggestion. And when the breeze grows stronger, the entire forest shifts. Branches creak and sway, tree trunks groan gently under the pressure. It's not a warning, but a participation, a joining of wood and wind in a performance that has no beginning and no end. No two forests sound the same. A stand of birch trees in the north whispers differently than palm trees near the sea. The sound of eucalyptus leaves in dry air is nothing like the soft murmur of beech leaves after rain. That's because each tree has its own shape, its own texture, its own language when stirred by the sky. The structure of a tree influences how it sounds in wind. Dense foliage may hush the wind, muffling it into near silence. Sparse branches may allow it to whistle through with clarity. Some leaves clap gently, others shimmer, some trees rattle, others sigh. Even the season changes the song. In summer, full canopies create a lush, layered melody. In winter, bare branches click and knock, a quieter, skeletal rhythm. In autumn, dry leaves lift and spin, sounding like soft paper in motion. And at the heart of it all is wind, the unseen conductor. It moves through the forest, not just as force, but as breath, lifting some trees, passing over others, circling and returning. Sometimes it plays a lullaby, other times a slow march, always changing, always aware. Many animals have learned to listen to this music. Birds detect shifts in tone that hint at weather changes. Deer pause when gusts stir the leaves too sharply. Even we, without realizing, respond to the mood in the trees. So, tonight, imagine a moonlit forest, perfectly still at first, until a breeze arrives. It moves through the branches with a gentle touch, and the trees begin to answer. Leaves rustle, limbs sway. The forest sings, not loudly, not brightly, but with depth and calm. Let the wind pass through your thoughts the same way. No resistance, just movement, just music. Trees playing the wind, and the wind playing us to sleep. We often think of wind as a traveller, carrying scents, stirring leaves, shaping clouds. But wind has another role, quieter and less visible. It cleans. Wind is the atmosphere's way of refreshing itself. A soft exhale, a movement that clears the air of what no longer serves. When the air grows heavy with dust, with pollen, with smoke from distant fires, or with the exhaust of a still city, it is wind that arrives to help. Not with violence, not with haste, but with persistence. It moves through slowly, brushing the sky clean. At ground level, this might look like nothing more than a shift in direction. But up above, particles are lifted, scattered, diluted. Tiny pollutants that once lingered are carried away, spread thin across the vastness of the sky until they are no longer dense enough to disturb. After a wildfire, you may notice the air grow clearer. After a long, hot day, a breeze may arrive in the evening, sweeping away the haze. After a storm, when the wind passes through, the world feels different, brighter, lighter, the same sky, but somehow renewed. That's wind at work, quietly, cleansing. Even in forests and meadows, wind disperses spores and seeds, keeping balance in ecosystems. It moves pollen from one flower to another, and then carries away the excess. It prevents stagnation. It promotes flow. And in cities, wind slips between buildings, under bridges, across concrete, diluting pockets of stale air. Without it, the air would grow dense and heavy. With it, the city breathes. Scientists call this ventilation, the natural exchange of air that reduces pollution and refreshes the lower atmosphere. But we don't need the technical term to understand its feeling. We've all experienced the first breeze after a hot, airless day, the first gust after long stillness. It is the atmosphere, turning the page. Wind doesn't discriminate. It touches mountain and plain, sea and street. And with each pass, it lifts what was lingering, dust, dander, smoke, mist, and gives the sky room to breathe again. You may not see this process, you may not hear it, but you can feel it in your chest. That deep, involuntary inhale you take when the wind passes by, as if your body remembers how to breathe along with the earth. So tonight, imagine the air around you being gently stirred, nothing forced, just the slow return of balance, the removal of weight you didn't know you were carrying. Wind, not as a storm, not as a sound, but as a cleansing breath, a gift that clears the way for clarity, for sleep, for peace. There is a deep connection between wind and flame, one that flickers with energy, balance, and change. In quiet spaces, a small fire may glow steadily, but when the wind arrives, it begins to move, to reach, to breathe. Wind gives fire direction. On a small scale, a breeze may help a campfire burn evenly. It nudges the flames, lifting smoke skyward, helping the fire consume its fuel more cleanly. But on a larger scale, in forests, grasslands, and dry hills, wind becomes more than a breeze. It becomes a guide. In wildfires, wind plays a powerful role. It feeds the fire by bringing in fresh oxygen, the very fuel flames need to grow. It pushes the fire forward, carrying heat into untouched terrain. And it spreads embers, sometimes far ahead of the flame front, igniting new fires in dry places not yet reached. This is what makes wildfires so dynamic and so challenging to predict. A shift in wind can change everything, and yet, wind also carries smoke away. It lifts it into the sky, allowing the land below to breathe again, however briefly. It disperses the heavy particles that might otherwise linger and choke the air. Wind is both the breath that stokes the fire and the breath that clears its path. In the language of fire behavior, terms like spotting, rate of spread, and fireline intensity all rely on the wind. When wind flows up a slope, fires tend to rise with it. When gusts change direction, flames can curl backward. Even the moisture in the air, shaped by regional wind patterns, can influence whether a spark turns into something more. But tonight, we speak not in alarm, but in balance. Fire is a natural part of many ecosystems. Some forests require it to thrive. Certain seeds won't sprout until fire passes through. Old growth gives way to new life, and wind, in all its complexity, helps decide where that renewal begins. After a burn, winds often soften. Ash settles. The scent of smoke lingers for a time, then fades. And the same wind that once pushed flame forward now carries nutrients, spores, and renewal across the land. Wind is not enemy or ally. It is a force, one that listens to heat and responds with motion. So tonight, if your thoughts feel like embers, drifting and glowing, let the wind in your imagination carry them gently away. Picture smoke rising not in fear, but in release. Picture the earth exhaling. Not everything the wind moves is dangerous. Sometimes it's just clearing space for something new. Beneath the calm surface of the sea, the water moves, not with chaos, but with purpose. And above it all, another force glides steadily across the waves, guiding that motion. Wind. The oceans, vast and blue, are stirred by the steady breath of air moving across their surface. These winds, especially the great belts, like the trade winds and westerlies, blow across the water with quiet determination, creating friction at the surface and gently pushing water into motion. That movement becomes a surface current, a river within the ocean, traveling great distances with patience and power. You've heard their names before. The Gulf Stream, warm and swift, flowing up the eastern coast of North America. The Kuroshio Current, winding past Japan. The California Current, cold and nutrient-rich, flowing down the Pacific coast. These are all wind-driven highways in the sea. The process begins at the top, where wind meets water. The air presses, nudges, strokes the surface. A push here, a tug there, and over time, the water begins to follow. Not directly, not in a straight line, but in wide, circular patterns called gyres, vast loops shaped by wind, Earth's rotation, and the boundaries of continents. The Coriolis effect also plays a part, curving the paths of these currents just as it curves the wind. And so, the ocean doesn't just flow, it spirals, drifts, turns, and returns. These currents do more than move water. They carry heat from the equator toward the poles, helping regulate the climate. They transport plankton, the base of the marine food chain. They shape where fish migrate, where corals grow, where weather systems form. Wind doesn't stir the deep ocean, not directly. But at the surface, it is the great shaper. Without wind, the sea would still move, but more slowly. With it, the ocean becomes alive with circulation, a fluid memory of air. You can see the evidence in satellite imagery, swirls and spirals on the ocean surface, shaped by wind, or in the gentle push of waves on a breezy day at the coast. The water responding with rhythms to the passing air. Even in the calmest moments, when the sea looks like glass, it is always moving, always following a path first traced by wind. So tonight, as you rest, imagine that movement, a breeze crossing the open ocean, a current beginning to stir, water traveling for weeks, for months, across thousands of miles, carrying warmth, life, and stories written in salt and sun. The wind above, the current below, together, shaping the heartbeat of the sea. The wind is a traveller, but it is also a gardener. Each day, with no sound, no ceremony, it carries life from place to place, gently lifting seeds from their origin and helping them find somewhere new to begin. It starts with the dandelion, that soft, white puff you remember from childhood, a globe of feathery seeds, perfectly balanced and waiting for one thing, the wind. With the faintest breath, the seeds let go. They rise, they spin, they drift, each one carried by a silky parachute, each one held aloft by the air's invisible fingers. This is wind dispersal, and it is nature's quiet choreography. The maple tree sends its seeds with a different motion. Their twin blades spin as they fall, creating little helicopters that glide through the air. The wind doesn't need to carry them far, just far enough. A few meters, a new patch of soil, a shaded place to grow. Other seeds float in silence. The cottonwood releases its seeds like drifting snow, each one so light it seems to hover. Grasses, thistles, and milkweed all let their seeds ride the wind, trusting that the air will guide them where they're meant to land. And it's not just the breeze at ground level. Higher up, in the boundary layers of the atmosphere, updrafts and turbulence lift seeds even farther, across meadows, across rivers, across continents. Some seeds are found hundreds of miles from where they began. But this is not chaos, it is opportunity. The wind, though unseen, is selective. It moves slowly on some days, giving seeds time to spiral gently to the ground. On other days, it lifts them higher, helping them pass over forests or mountains. This process, called anemochory, is one of the oldest partnerships on Earth. Plants depend on it. Entire forests have taken root because of it. Grasses have expanded across continents. Wildflowers bloom on hillsides miles from their parent stems. And the seeds, they wait patiently, built for flight, waiting for the right gust, the right moment. Some lie dormant for years after they land. Some sprout within days, but all of them carry the signature of the wind in their arrival, a quiet beginning made possible by motion. So tonight, imagine a field just after sunrise. The grass is still, the air is soft, and then a breeze arrives. A few tiny seeds lift into the sky. They dance, they drift, they disappear over the hill. No rush, no force, just a gentle hand moving life from here to there. The wind is a gardener, and every seed it carries is a story just beginning. Sound is born of vibration, of strings plucked, of voices spoken, of wings beating the air. But to travel, it needs a companion. It needs the wind. Wind doesn't create sound, but it carries it. It stretches it across valleys. It bends it through forests. It scatters it over open plains and across still lakes. It is the messenger of the sky. When the breeze is soft, you may hear sounds from far away. Laughter from a house down the hill. The distant bark of a dog. A bell echoing from a church tower. These sounds would fade quickly in still air, but the wind takes them, wraps them, and delivers them softly to your ears. In open landscapes, especially at dawn or dusk, this effect becomes more noticeable. The air cools, the land quiets, and the wind becomes a conduit, carrying not just air, but echoes. Birdsong, too, travels farther when carried by the breeze. The call of a loon across a northern lake, the hoot of an owl drifting through fog, a warbler's chirp reaching beyond the treetops. Even human voices change in the wind. A whisper may sound nearer than it is. A shout may feel far away. The wind doesn't just carry sound, it shapes it. It can bend sound upward, especially at night, when cooler air settles near the ground. Or it can funnel sound down mountain passes or through narrow streets, guiding it like water through a channel. On stormy days, you may hear the hum of power lines, the rustle of awnings, or the distant thrum of thunder, all shaped by wind. And on calm nights, when the air is barely moving, even the tiniest sound can feel profound. Wind, in its quiet way, helps the world speak. It does not interrupt. It does not compete. It listens. And when the time is right, It carries words, music, memories, all wrapped in motion. So, tonight, listen closely. Maybe you'll hear the sound of wind through trees, or a passing car, or your own breath, steady and soft. All of it carried, all of it shaped by the air around you. Let the wind be a messenger for your dreams. Let it carry your thoughts away. Let the echoes fade into calm. There's a moment, just after the wind, when everything stops. The leaves go still, the grasses stop swaying, the air settles, like a held breath. It is the silence after the wind, a hush so deep, it feels as though the world itself is listening. We often focus on the wind's motion, its dance through trees, its swirl across fields. But the absence that follows can be just as powerful. It doesn't announce itself. It simply arrives. And when it does, something shifts. That quiet is profound. You may have felt it after a passing gust. The wind blows through, rustling curtains or clattering branches. And then, without warning, it leaves. What remains is more than stillness. It's an awareness, a softness, the echo of motion having ceased. This silence isn't empty, it's full of calm, full of waiting, full of presence. In forests, this pause feels especially deep. Birds quiet, the canopy stops moving, the hush settles over everything like a soft blanket. It's as though the trees are remembering what stillness feels like, savoring it before the wind returns. On the sea, the effect is just as striking. After a squall or a strong breeze, the waves ease. The air flattens. The surface of the water shimmers in a new, gentle way. No longer stirred, but resting. Even in cities, you can feel it. After the rush of passing traffic or a sudden wind between buildings, the quiet feels sharper, truer, like the world has gone still for just a breath, and that breath belongs to you. There's something deeply human about sensing this pause. We feel it not only with our ears, but with our nervous system. When the wind calms, we calm with it. Our shoulders soften, our heartbeat slows. We tune ourselves to the atmosphere without even trying. In weather science, the wind's disappearance might be explained by changing pressure systems, by terrain, by timing. But for us, here in this restful moment, we don't need equations. We only need to notice. Because sometimes, stillness feels deeper after motion. Quiet is more meaningful after sound. And peace is more vivid after the wind has passed. So tonight, imagine a single gust brushing past your window, and then disappearing. The leaves settle, the air smooths, and you are left with silence. Not loneliness, not emptiness, but a soft pause. A moment held, the silence after the wind. Is the earth remembering how to be still? Far out over the open ocean, where the horizon is unbroken and the air is warm, the trade winds blow with quiet confidence. Steady, dependable, and calm, they carry with them more than air. They carry clouds. The warm ocean surface gently heats the air above it. Moisture rises, slowly, steadily, carried upward by the invisible hand of convection. As this moist air lifts into the sky, it cools. And as it cools, it forms clouds. But not storm clouds, not towering giants. These are the soft, rounded cumulus clouds that you might recognize from childhood drawings. Pillowy, white, and peaceful. The trade winds gather them gently, arranging them across the sky like drifting islands of cotton. They float above the blue in loose formations, never too close, never too far apart. And below them, the sea responds. Each cloud casts a shadow on the ocean surface, a darkened patch that glides slowly with the wind's direction. These shadows move like watercolor strokes across the waves, subtle and ever-shifting. From above, this interplay is mesmerizing. Pale blue water meets deep navy ripples. Bright sunlight filters between clouds, creating shifting mosaics of light and shadow that flicker across the surface. It's a visual dance between air and water, one creating shapes in the sky, the other receiving them below. Pilots and sailors have long watched these clouds, reading their shapes and movements like a skybound map. The consistency of the trade winds makes them reliable guides. Where the cumulus clouds build, moisture is rising. Where they thin, drier air prevails. And though the clouds may seem gentle, they mark an important boundary, the marine boundary layer, where ocean warmth meets the atmosphere above. It is here that clouds form in harmony with the sea, shaped and spread by wind. These trade wind cumulus clouds rarely bring rain. They simply float, content to shade the water below. They are the soft breath of the tropics, carried westward across thousands of miles. And beneath them, life flourishes. The oceans, stirred by trade winds, support rich ecosystems. The winds help drive surface currents, bringing nutrients up from the deep. This movement nourishes plankton, which feeds fish, which supports all life that follows. Even coral reefs near the equator feel the rhythm of these winds, their waters cooled slightly by the breezes, their sunlight filtered by passing clouds. So, tonight, picture yourself floating gently in that open space, clouds drifting above, shadows dancing below. Nothing rushed, just slow motion across a wide, quiet world. The wind carries the clouds cast their shadows, and the ocean listens. This is the rhythm of the trade winds, a harmony between sky and sea. In the warmth of midday, when sunlight settles on fields, hills, and rooftops, something quiet begins to stir, not on the ground, but in the air above it. The heat, though invisible, begins to lift. This rising warmth forms thermals, columns of warm air that move upward from the land into the sky. These aren't gusts or breezes. They don't push or sweep. They lift, softly, silently, like invisible elevators in the atmosphere. Thermals form when the sun unevenly heats the Earth's surface. Darker areas, like ploughed fields, rocky outcrops, or paved roads, absorb more sunlight than nearby grass or water. The air above these warmer patches gains energy, becomes lighter, and begins to rise, slowly at first, then steadily. As this pocket of warm air lifts, cooler air from the surroundings slides in to replace it. That cooler air will warm in turn, and rise again. A cycle begins, a vertical motion, a column of rising breath. To us on the ground, thermals are usually unseen, but birds know them well. Large birds like eagles, hawks, and vultures often spiral within these rising columns. Their wings spread wide, barely flapping. They soar on thermals, gaining altitude without effort. Floating upward in wide circles, they ride the lift until they're high enough to glide toward their next destination. Glider pilots do the same. Without engines, they rely on thermals to gain height, searching for signs like cumulus clouds forming above sun-warmed ground, or the sudden upward bump beneath their wings. Finding a thermal is like finding a hidden staircase in the sky. Thermals can range in size, some only a few meters wide, others spanning hundreds of feet. Most are gentle, steady, peaceful. They help form fair-weather cumulus clouds, the puffy white clouds you see dotting blue afternoon skies. These clouds often sit atop thermal columns, visible markers of where warm air is rising. And though thermals are strongest during the day, They begin to fade in the evening. As the sun lowers, the ground cools and the upward motion quiets. The sky returns to a more settled state, but during their active hours, thermals help move energy, moisture, and even pollutants upward, playing a quiet role in balancing the lower atmosphere. They are not disruptive, they are restorative. So tonight, imagine the sun warming a quiet hillside. Picture the warmth lifting gently, taking with it leaves, seeds, or the silent wings of a hawk. No force, no wind in the traditional sense. Just a slow, vertical breath, a current that carries, that supports, that gives rise. Thermals, not winds that rush, but winds that lift. Up in the sky, above the clouds, and far from the ground, wind still moves, sometimes stronger than ever. But here, it's not something to brace against. For pilots, wind becomes a partner in flight. Airplanes are built to move forward through air, but the air itself is also moving, rivers of wind sweeping across the upper atmosphere. These winds can help a plane, or slow it down. It all depends on direction. When a plane flies with the wind behind it, we call this a tailwind. It adds speed. It helps the aircraft cover ground faster, just like a current helping a boat downstream. Flights with strong tailwinds often arrive early, cruising along with less effort, less fuel, and greater ease. But when a plane flies into the wind, a headwind, it must work harder. The aircraft still moves forward through the air at the same speed, but the ground below passes by more slowly. Fuel use increases. Travel takes longer. Pilots often adjust routes or altitudes to minimize headwinds when possible. These wind patterns are especially strong in the upper levels of the atmosphere, where jet streams, those fast-moving rivers of air, flow from west to east. Long-haul flights often plan their paths to intersect with favorable jet streams or avoid strong opposing ones. But wind isn't only about speed, it also affects lift. Planes rely on the air moving over their wings to generate lift. If the wind direction changes quickly with height, a condition known as wind shear, it can momentarily disturb the plane's stability. Pilots are trained to adjust smoothly, and modern aircraft handle these changes with grace. Even during takeoff and landing, wind is considered with care. A light crosswind, blowing from the side, requires minor corrections. A direct headwind, though it slows ground speed, actually provides more lift during takeoff, helping planes rise more quickly. In all these situations, wind is not an obstacle. It's a factor, a companion in motion. Pilots learn to read the wind, to anticipate it, to work with it, and the wind, in turn, shapes every journey through the sky. It influences flight times, fuel use, and the gentle curves you see when looking at airplane routes on a map. Even turbulence, those small bumps in the sky, is often caused by changes in wind, either around jet streams or mountains below. But turbulence is rarely dangerous. It's simply the atmosphere's way of shifting, of moving layers, just as it always does. So tonight, picture an airplane gliding smoothly at 35,000 feet. Outside, the wind flows, steady and strong. Below, the clouds drift. Above, the stars watch silently, and the plane, guided by instruments and intuition, rides the invisible currents of air, not fighting the wind, but flying with it. In the sky, wind is not the enemy. It is the air beneath the wings. In cities, the wind doesn't disappear. It changes, it twists, it turns. It's shaped by streets and shadows. Instead of flowing over hills or trees, it slips through something else. Stone canyons, made not by nature, but by human hands. We call it the urban canyon. When wind enters a city filled with tall buildings, glass towers, concrete walls, narrow lanes, it finds itself in a labyrinth. These structures act like cliffs, redirecting the flow of air. What was once a smooth breeze becomes fractured, sped up, slowed down, or sent spinning into little whirlpools of motion known as eddies. Even a light wind can feel stronger in the city. That's because it gets squeezed between buildings, channeled through streets like water through a hose. This compression increases its speed. A corner that was calm one moment may feel gusty the next, all due to how the wind interacts with architecture. This is called the Venturi effect, and it's not unique to cities. The same thing happens in mountain passes or river valleys. But in urban areas, it creates a distinctive feeling. Wind that bends around corners, rushes through alleyways, and ripples through canopies of steel and glass. Some buildings are so tall, they disrupt the wind above them, sending it downward in unpredictable swirls. This can lead to sudden gusts at ground level, brief but noticeable. Pedestrians feel them as a tug at a coat, a sudden lift of hair, a stirring of leaves in the gutter. And yet, in between these gusts, the city holds stillness too. Wind curls in quiet spots, behind courtyards, in atriums, under bridges. These sheltered places offer contrast, calm shadows where the wind rests, only to be stirred again at the next intersection. In warmer months, city winds offer relief, carrying cool air between heat-trapping walls. In winter, the same breeze may bite a little sharper, pressed between frozen facades. But always, it moves, even in sleep. At night, when traffic quiets and lights dim, the city's winds become gentler. The heat of the day escapes from rooftops. The breeze slows. It glides between windows, over parks, across empty sidewalks. Just like in nature, the nighttime atmosphere becomes more stable. The wind whispers now, rather than speaks. So tonight, imagine yourself standing in the heart of a quiet city. The lights are low, the streets are empty. You feel a breeze pass by, not wild, not loud, but shaped, directed, like a river of air winding through stone valleys. The urban canyon doesn't block the wind, it sculpts it. Even in places made of steel, the wind still finds a way to move. Long before satellites, barometers, or Doppler radar, people watched the sky and listened to the wind. They watched smoke drift, leaves turn, flags snap. They noticed how birds flew lower before rain, or how the breeze grew still before a change. In this quiet observation, a tradition was born, reading the wind. Sailors were among the first to become fluent. At sea, wind is everything. It fills sails, carries ships, signals storms. Ancient mariners watched wave patterns, cloud shapes, and even the flight paths of seabirds to understand what the wind would do next. They learned to read the sky like a map and the breeze like a voice. In the Mediterranean, winds were named Mistral, Sirocco, Levante, each with its own direction, mood, and message. These weren't just meteorological terms. They were part of the language of life at sea and on shore. A named wind became a signal, a story, a tradition passed through generations. Farmers, too, learned to read the wind. Before modern forecasts, they looked to the smoke from their chimneys, to the way wheat swayed in the fields. A shift in wind direction might bring rain. A warm breeze might mean an early thaw. Even now, many who live close to the land still trust their instincts more than the weather app. Poets and storytellers found meaning in the wind as well. It was not just a force, it was a feeling. The west wind was gentle, The east wind brought change. The north wind whispered of winter. The south carried warmth and memory. These associations weren't scientific, but they held emotional truth. Across the world, wind has been given voice. In Japan, koinobori, carp streamers, are flown in May. These colourful windsocks flutter and twist, telling of the season and symbolising strength. In parts of the Andes, woven flags are used to measure high-altitude breezes. In Africa, smoke and ash patterns once told travellers which way to go. Even now, in the modern age, we still glance at the treetops or watch the clouds as they shift. We still pause to feel the breeze on our skin. The wind speaks softly, and some part of us still knows how to listen. And in quiet moments, on a porch, on a boat, on a hill, we find ourselves watching again. The smoke, the leaves, the air. So tonight, imagine a time when wind was the only forecast, when a flag in the wind was a message, when rustling grass spoke of rain. Even now, the wind tells us things. We only need to look, to feel, to remember. Traditions that read the wind are not forgotten. They are simply waiting in the breeze. There are moments in the atmosphere when something shifts, not loudly, not suddenly, but noticeably. A breeze that once came from the west now drifts in from the north. The scent in the air changes. The sky, once still, begins to stir. A change in wind direction has occurred. And in that simple shift, the weather prepares to change. Wind is more than movement. It's a messenger, a signal. Often, long before clouds gather or rain begins to fall, the wind tells us what's coming. A turn from south to west, from warm to cool, from stillness to motion. These changes often signal the arrival or departure of a weather front. A front is where two different air masses meet. Perhaps warm, moist air from the tropics is rising to meet cooler, drier air from the north. Or maybe a pocket of high pressure is giving way to something lower and more dynamic. When these air masses move, the wind responds first. You might not see anything right away, but the breeze feels different. It carries a new tone. The trees sway at a slightly different angle. The air might smell fresher or heavier. Sometimes, a shifting wind brings warmth ahead of a low-pressure system. Other times, it brings cool relief behind a departing storm. You might notice it on your skin, the air no longer rising, but gliding. Not dry, but moist. Not sharp, but soft. It's subtle, like the earth taking a different kind of breath. Meteorologists watch these shifts carefully. A change in wind direction is often the first sign that a front is moving through, a forecast in motion. It may mean rain is on its way, or that a storm is easing, or that clearer skies are returning, blue and gentle. And even without instruments, we feel it. People have long relied on this sense, the way animals grow restless before a storm, or how the leaves of certain trees turn upward. A shift in wind tells the world to prepare. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, just a gentle nudge in a new direction. But in that moment, the atmosphere rearranges itself, balancing, flowing, adjusting. The next time you feel the wind change, pause, breathe it in, listen to the message. Is the rain on its way out? Is a cool front moving in? The answers are already in the air. And tonight, let that shift be a comfort. Let it be a sign that things are moving, but not rushed. That nature has a rhythm, a cycle, a way of turning from one chapter to the next. The wind changes, and so does the sky. And now, dear friend, we return to stillness. After this long, gentle journey through the winds of the world, through jet streams and sea breezes, mountain size and trade wind skies, we settle back into the moment, into the now, into rest. Tonight, let the wind be your lullaby. Imagine it brushing gently across an open field. Grasses sway, not in hurry, but in rhythm. A soft whisper moves through the stalks, like a hand across fabric. Each blade rises and falls, touched by a current older than memory. Or picture it in the forest, drifting through tall pines. The branches shift just slightly. The needles shiver, then settle. You hear the hush of wind weaving through green, never too loud, never too fast, just enough to remind you that the earth is breathing. You might imagine it passing by your window. A curtain lifts, a leaf rustles. The air cools your skin as you lie still, safe, cradled by the sounds of night. Some winds carry change, others carry memory, but this wind right now is only carrying you. Let it move through your thoughts, slow and smooth. Let it gather up anything heavy and lift it away. Let it guide you like a feather drifting on air towards sleep. There's nothing more to do, nowhere more to be. Only this moment, only this breath. Let the wind tuck you in. Let it carry you gently into sleep. And as our soft exploration of winds comes to a close, I hope you found comfort in the quiet paths the air takes, how it glides across oceans, dances between mountains, and brushes gently through trees. Winds are always with us, not always seen, but always felt. Sometimes a whisper, sometimes a breath, sometimes only the hush between moments. Wherever you are tonight, may the soft rhythm of moving air offer you rest. Let the memory of sea breezes, forest winds, or starlit jet streams lull your thoughts into stillness. There is a calm in the unseen, a peace in the way the world moves quietly beneath the stars. If you'd like to return for more dreamy weather journeys, you are always welcome here. Feel free to subscribe, only if it feels gentle, and unhurried to do so. This is a space for softness, a place to slow down, a place to drift. But for now, there's truly nothing more to do. No more winds to follow, only sleep. Let the air hold you. Let your breath slow. Good night. Peaceful dreams, calm skies to you.